Welcome to this video lecture in preparation of the next session dedicated to the period of nationalism and liberalism. Before we deal with this subject that belongs to the second half of the 19th century, let me provide you some background on how Cologne entered the 19th century. As a matter of fact, in European history, the 19th century marks a radical watershed, an epochal change. The decisive moment was, of course, the French Revolution in 1789, which changed everything, as we will see in a subsequent chapter. Until 1789, the socio-political order in Europe is called the Ancien Régime, the Old Order in French. From the early 19th century on, Europe is exploring what we still call modern forms of social and political organization. Cologne follows this pattern, but with some very peculiar particularities. By the late 18th century, Cologne was known as a dirty, rotten, degenerated city run by a handful of powerful, relatively wealthy families. Families who benefited from century-old privileges. Based on a protectionist system of corporations, so-called Gaffeln, it were the medieval craftsmen like the weavers or websters, the cobblers or shoemakers, the carpenters and the tradesmen and merchants who governed the city. It was a close oligarchy, a handcraft nomenclatura which, thanks to the corporations, controlled all economic activities in town and protected themselves from competition both from within and outside the city. In a nutshell, Cologne was run by a mafia of wealthy craftsmen who ruled the city to their own benefit, but without any interest in developing the city to the advantage of the population. The formerly glorious Reichsstadt, imperial city, was caught in its outdated medieval traditions, suffered from regulations and limitations which cut it off from modern economic developments, including the proscription of entire economic sectors, which had brought prosperity to other cities and regions in the meantime, and it was based on a hierarchical social system that assigned privilege and fortune as much as poverty and desperation by birth and descent. The reason for this traumatic backwardness, which by far exceeded the traditional setting of the Ancien Régime in most parts of Europe, the reasons for this can be found in a historical gap that is characteristic for Cologne. Due to its particularly strong position and situation during medieval times, Cologne did not share a number of historical developments which took place in Western and Middle Europe. Cologne never was part of an absolutist state. It missed the experience of a centralized state with a regent and a powerful court. It did not enjoy the cultural benefits from such a ruler, which are linked to Baroque splendor and classicist achievements. Cologne did not participate in the debates of Enlightenment and of Rationalism, which prepared and laid the grounds for modern intellectual movements like Liberalism, Constitutionalism, Individualism, democracy, but also to industrialism, capitalism, technology and modern science. All this happened outside of Cologne and was ignored by the citizens of Cologne itself. The French Revolution, not surprisingly, did not cause any productive reaction in Cologne. However, as the French revolutionary government felt urged to defend its achievements by waging a war against its reactionary neighbors, Cologne soon had to face the specter of revolution too. In 1794, the French forces defeated the allied forces of the old Holy Roman Empire, to which Cologne officially belonged. The battle happened in nearby Jülich, which made Cologne an easy prey. The French actually incorporated the entire Rhineland from Düsseldorf to Speyer into the French state, as they considered the Rhine an ideal natural border. Here we see a representation of that battle that led to the occupation of Cologne. The French occupation and subsequent annexation to France ultimately was a stroke of luck for Cologne and its population. It allowed the city to quickly get rid of its anachronistic socio-political system and to catch up with several centuries of development guided by Europe's leading reform nation. Within a few months and even more intensely after the annexation, the French occupants wiped away not only the dominance of the corporations and of the happy few craftsmen, they also wiped away the dominance of the Catholic Church and by thoroughly secularizing the city, expropriating cloisters and churches, and freeing lands and areas in the center for public or entrepreneurial uses. They also introduced a modern legal system based on independent jurisdiction and introducing courts of appeal. They imported the civil code and other basic legal texts and procedures, and they integrated the Rhineland and Cologne into the French administrative system, which introduced urgently needed modern administrative practices and procedures to Cologne. The Code Civil certainly was an epochal achievement. It essentially codified the results of the French Revolution: abolition of feudal privileges, legal equality, and freedom from arbitrariness, civil and licensed government. The French dominion over the Rhineland and Cologne lasted 20 years. When in 1813 Napoleon failed to conquer Russia and a few months later was defeated in the Battle of Nations at Leipzig, basically all Europe had been in war. This is why a pan-European congress had to restore, or better, restructure, the European order. That was the task of the Congress of Vienna in 1814-1815. On the one side, the Congress indubitably had the intention to contain revolutionary ideas and movements, as it was clear that the Napoleonic calamities had been a consequence of the revolutionary spark that had been originated in France. Restoration and reaction was therefore an important aspect for the new European order. However, this conservative aim could only be achieved by revolutionary means. In order to secure a stable European political system of states, borders had to be shifted. Borders had to be redrawn and corrected. Entire states vanished, new ones were designed, and small ones had to merge with others in order to survive. Or they were simply annexed to bigger ones. The Rhineland, for example, was assigned to Prussia for a simple reason. The Rhineland was bordered directly to France and needed to be fortified and developed into a line of defense. This could only be ensured by a big player like Prussia, known for its military power and certainly not inclined to tolerate revolutionary ideas. Hence, Cologne ended up to become the most western city of Prussia. As such, it was integrated into a conservative authoritarian state with King Frederick William III on the top. Where is the Rhineland? Well, it's here, as you can see, with Cologne right in the middle of it. And the new border to France now was again behind the Rhine line. Okay. However, the Rhinelanders, and in particular the population in Cologne, clinged to many of the achievements of the last decades. They managed to defend them against Prussian pressures. The legal and economic frameworks, for example, either got granted as a regional exception or became even adopted by the Prussian state, as the need for reform was felt also in Berlin. Nevertheless, the relationship between Rhinelanders and Prussians was a delicate one. The Catholics in Cologne and at the Rhine had a different frame of mind than the Prussian Protestants, to start with. Furthermore, Cologne continued to cherish memories of a past independence as an imperial city. And then, of course, there was this strange, erratic thing called Carnival, which the Prussians never fully understood but had to tolerate, as it was genetically part of the population of Cologne. Politically speaking, the Rhinelands were far more progressive than the Prussian core regions in the east of Germany. It was obvious right from the beginning, but it became most evident during the revolution of 1848-49, when the so-called Rhenish liberalism was a leading force both in public debate and in the constitutional movement within the national parliament summoned in Frankfurt. During the half century under Prussian rule, Cologne developed into a modern city, thanks to a bourgeois elite that courageously invested in modern infrastructure and innovative industries. Cologne modernized further, became both a traffic and economic hub in the western part of the German Federation, while at the same time being armed and militarized by the Prussians as the western fortress against what was called the French threat. Politically speaking, the Rhinelands were, as I said, far more progressive. Here you can see that at the same time the Cologne Cathedral became a national symbol, and the completion of the cathedral was financed with funding from all over Germany. A prominent cathedral celebration in 1848 underlines the importance of Cologne for the liberal movement during the revolution. Here we see a contemporary illustration of this, In the back, please note the unfinished cathedral, over here. Okay. During the half century under Prussian rule, Cologne developed into a modern city. I think I said that already. With the German unification and the foundation of the German Empire, Cologne becomes the western center of Germany. It is only then that its rise to a real metropolis begins. Thanks, and have a look at the following videos as well. Bye.